Hey everyone, this is Billy Bross with Simple Marketing for Smart People, where I am interviewing smart people who have built a business around their area of expertise. And now they're realizing, oh my gosh, I got to do marketing. So I am joined by Simone Lis. Simone, great having you here, and let us know, what is your area of expertise?
Yeah, hi Billy. Thanks for having me. My expertise is digital fluency, and nobody knows probably what it is, but I can tell you in probably one sentence is that I help women to boost their tech confidence, being ready, future ready for these fast-paced AI life and jobs what we experience for tomorrow. So that's actually what I'm really interested in, kind of making more women tech confident.
I love that. Yeah, and I love that you're in tech because it's such a great example for everyone, no matter what industry or niche that you're in, because of what we focus on so much in the book is education and really pulling ourselves as experts out of the weeds and meeting our prospect, our potential client or customer where they are. And so I think a great area to study for us all to learn how to do that better is the area of tech, because that's an area where people really tend to get pulled down in the weeds, and that can really hamper their marketing efforts. So I'm excited to speak with you, Simone. And I first want to ask you, so now you're in this position where you have this area of expertise, you're building a business around it that requires marketing. What prior experience did you have before this business you're in now with sales and or marketing?
So my background is actually marketing and PR, but we're talking about over 10 years ago, right? So I started in a PR agency for technology companies. So I was responsible for helping B2B software companies to tell their story in a new and interesting way. But I did marketing or PR more about like, I mean, at that point it was still like fax and we sent out press releases, all these kind of by mail and all these kind of things. And then I started my career on corporate side and kind of build up my management career in PR, also for B2C companies. And that's actually my background. But what I realized about is that I totally missed the social media kind of area. In corporate, all these things are a bit slower. And most of the time you have agencies who take over all the specialities. So when I kind of came out of corporate and started my own business, I was kind of feeling a little bit behind in all these kind of things. And
Mhm.
in the beginning, I didn't need it because my business was consulting and a lot of word of mouth. But then when I started my B2C company recently, I felt like, oh my God, I have a lot of challenges in my life to do and to figure out.
Yeah, so tell me about that, because we come from somewhat similar backgrounds in that we have a more traditional education, but then in business education and experience, but then we're in this world where we're doing more consulting, more B2C, more social media, and we realize, oh my gosh, like this is a whole different ballgame. So, what were some of those realizations that you had, or maybe weaknesses that you realized that you had to shore up?
So when I changed from business to business, as I said, to B2C, suddenly I was talking to real people and I was trying to convince them, or not convince them, but kind of inspire them about my story and why it's so important to be more tech confident in this world. And everybody said at the end of my conversation, "Wow, it's really interesting. What are you doing?" But I have no idea what you're talking about because I was so deep into my expertise over 10 years and I had so many stories, but I had really problems to kind of develop my voice, I would say, right? So to get like a logic in to kind of tell my story that people understand it. I was way too deep often in this expertise where I lost people. And that was probably the biggest challenge in the beginning I had. In addition to all these tools, converting, like ConvertKit, like email marketing, funnel marketing, all these kind of things, all the terms I'd never heard in my life before. And suddenly that was also kind of a thing I was like experiencing. Oh my God, how I can do this. I have not a single person on my newsletter list. So everybody talks about, oh, just set the newsletter to your list, but I had zero person on my list. So how do you do this, right? So I was thinking how I can get my story out into the world to kind of inspire more people to follow me.
Hmm. How did you manage that? So it sounds like, were you aware of that when you were speaking to people and they weren't getting it? Could you tell that they weren't getting it?
Yeah, easy because nobody bought my product, right? So that was kind of
Yeah.
the result. And then you can think, of course, in the beginning when you're like me, like imposter syndrome, you think, oh my God, maybe the product is not good enough, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. But then I figured out that people just did not see the value for them. You know, they said like things like, oh, it's too expensive, or I don't have time. And that showed me really that they don't feel the pain. They don't see the pain, why they should do it. And that kind of made me thinking how I can convince them, you know, like, or
Mhm.
inspire them to think about it, because I do believe every woman out there in the professional life has this problem. But how can I show them that it's so important for them to be more tech confident and be part of that game, especially now with AI? And
Mhm.
that was kind of a lot of thinking how I can do this. And I
Mhm.
figured out I had to do kind of a spring clean, like kind of cleaning up a closet exactly like this, like getting out all these stories I had in the closet and kind of putting it back in an interesting way that I tell a whole story from who is the person who has a problem, what is the problem, but also then obviously how does the life on the other side look like.
Yeah, no, and you've done a great job of rocking our five light bulbs framework and really turning those light bulbs on, which is based on this idea of belief building, which we talk about in the book. And so many experts just make assumptions and think that their prospects have these beliefs or share these beliefs that the expert shares. And if you operate under that assumption, and then the expert just going to they're gonna keep walking, but and thinking the person is following them, but they left the person way behind. So what it sounds like you had that realization, and I know going through like our five light bulbs exercise has surfaced a lot of that. So what were some of the assumptions that you realized that you were making about your reader?
So in the beginning, I think what my biggest challenge or problem I saw was like that I did not really think about who is actually the person I wanted to talk to, right? So if you don't have the person in mind who who you think it has a problem, then nothing else works. And so I went really deep into understanding who my avatar is, and who is really the woman I'm looking for, who I can really help. And also then also understanding that there are a lot of people who are yet totally unaware about the problem, and also it's really difficult to kind of convince them that technology kind of can help them, and also to accept that these kind of women are not my target group. So kind of really finding and getting through the noise and finding the handful of women I really believe I can transform and can help and inspire them to change their life and also their careers. And that's actually, I think that was the first step I did. So I did a lot of interviews. I reached out to
Mhm.
probably 100 women, and I tried to understand who they are and what kind of pain points they have. And I learned a lot about in these kind of interviews.
Ah, that's so good. Does everyone listening, do you hear that? Interview people, speak with
Mhm.
them, actually speak with them, listen to them. That's such a good example. That's something I preach all the time, and I get it. It can be uncomfortable and also time consuming as well. But I'm sure you would agree, Simone. It's so valuable. So I'm curious. One of these things that is, I would say, the most difficult part of this belief building process is identifying those beliefs that people have. And so, if we can get any insight onto how to do that better, I want to share that. Were there things that, because you did a bunch of these interviews, were there patterns that you recognized eventually, after maybe you did 5 or 10 or 15, could a woman start to say something, and you could sort of put her in a bucket and say, okay, she's more unaware because of she's said this, or maybe her behavior is this, or this tool she's using is this. Did things like that come up where you could recognize where they were in that spectrum, that chain of beliefs?
Yes. So there was a big aha moment for me in the beginning. As I said, the first when I spoke to them, or kind of asked them why you didn't buy or what was the problem, why you didn't want to be part of that kind of program, they told me that they don't have time. Like, I don't have time was probably the number one reason they didn't want to be part of. And the second reason was like, oh, maybe it's too expensive. But then, like,
Mm.
at one point I was thinking about it. When I say I don't have time or it's too expensive, for me, it means like there's an underlying problem. Actually, I don't see, as I said, the value. I don't see the pain or why I should invest so much money in me. So I went to deeper. So did a follow-up call with a lot of these women. And then suddenly I got to the roots of the problem. So most of the women I talked to had kind of an anxiety, like I call it now AI
Mm.
anxiety, but let's say, for example, now with AI, I was like, okay, I did an AI challenge for you for free. You signed up. And so it was for free. It didn't cost any money, but you did not do it at the end. But you told me you want to do it. So why you didn't do it? And again, it was first like, oh, I don't have time. But then suddenly they said, for example, oh, I feel like cheating when I use AI tools, or um, I feel like somebody takes my creativity away, or I'm afraid of how the future will look like. I'm totally afraid of how my kids will grow up in this really crazy world. So I saw that it is not the time problem or the investment problem. It's more an anxiety people have, or like an emotional blockage in their thinking, in their believing. And I believe it is a gender it has something to do with the gender thing, because how we grew up as women often, we have cultural things like, oh, I'm not so digital, or we didn't have like role models in our life to do it, or we always had to work really hard to be valued and seen. And now the cheating comes in with a tool. And so I realized that is actually the underlying problem, and none of these upskilling programs on the market can help if you don't remove first this belief, this wrong limiting belief, and then kind of upskill later.
I think that's all that was super interesting, but especially what you said about this belief, because we're trying to hone in on these beliefs. That's our goal as product creators, marketers, business owners. And so that belief that is cheating, I think that's super interesting. And that using these AI tools is a form of cheating. But then it's made more interesting by the fact that you said it comes from how these women grew up, where they had to do work to show their value, hard work to show their value. Can you elaborate on that? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, what I also realized about interviewing them, but also I hosted live sessions where I kind of put them in circles together. What I also realized is also a cultural difference. So I'm German. And so, for example, mixing them up with women from California, I figured out that there is different limiting beliefs. So, for example, how we grew up in Germany about perfectionism, right? This is like the most important thing, like made in Germany, the quality is like the number one
Mm.
thing, which is the opposite of entrepreneurial thinking, and also the opposite of how you use AI, because the first draft you get is always shit. You have to invest more and iterate and iterate.
Mm.
So it's a completely different thinking. So that's also why I understood that these women have this different limiting beliefs, and it is part of how you grew up, how you,
Mm.
if your mom told you, oh, I'm not digital, that's dad who's doing it, right? You grow up already with this kind of things and mindset. And I also realized it's not only an age problem, because we always think like, oh, the younger generation is so much more tech confident
Mm.
than we are. What I realized is they are not tech afraid. So they are not afraid of touching technology, which most of my generation of women are. But these young generation have the same problems, the same limiting beliefs, and the same confidence,
Mm.
which is missing. So that's, I think, an interesting insight for all of us, because right now all these upskilling programs on the market in AI assume that we have this tech confidence mindset. But if you don't have that, all of these upskilling programs don't work. So you have to find a new teaching version, a new approach, how to um, overcome this limiting beliefs first, and then you can upskill whatever you want.
Well, I like that you use that phrase, limiting beliefs. And that's one that we don't talk about in the book, but so I'm putting that in the context of what we talk about with belief building, and that totally makes sense. It is a limiting belief. It's a limiting, and then from your perspective as a business owner, it's a limiting belief in that it limits your ability to present your offer in a way that it is fully valued by your prospect,
Hmm.
because that's, to use the chain of beliefs term, that's way up the chain. So if someone believes that, well, perfection is important and dialing it in, the German mindset, German engineering, and that is really key, then you're going to have a hard time convincing them to use, I think it's a Silicon Valley term, you probably know it, move fast and break
Hmm.
things. Have you heard that one?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly
It
that.
sounds like Germans don't follow that ethos.
No, they also have this failure, not this failure culture which Silicon Valley has, right? So like making failure here is kind of cool and it's kind of part of learning. In Germany, it's the opposite. Like you're not allowed to do a failure. And it's really hard to overcome that kind of belief if everybody, the teachers, your parents, your company, like everybody's kind of has this kind of mindset. It's really, really hard. But the interesting thing with all these new technologies, which are on, you do have to do failures. You do have to experiment.
Mm.
German always want to regulate everything before, like making all the rules and all the lists to be safe, right? We have so many insurance companies. That's why insurance is so high in Germany. We all do these kind of things beforehand. But the interesting thing, especially now with technology, especially AI, we don't know the future, and you only figured it out
Mm.
by doing. You learn by doing, by experimenting, and then and then make the rules and then come up with some ideas. So it's the opposite. Yeah, it's from the opposite side. And it does have to do a lot of how we grew up and all these kind of things. It's really interesting to see.
So a good lesson there is that when you're identifying these current beliefs that your people have, think about their cultural upbringing as well.
Mhm.
Think about what they were told, how they were raised, what they were told. We talk about this in the book. Identify what's important for success with your product. Well, think about what they were told was important growing up for
Yeah.
success. I talk about this. I love the Germany example because I have this beer background. Obviously, Germans love beer
Mhm.
brewing, and I use this comparison between, I do it between the Germans and the Belgians. Very close in geography, but very different styles of brewing. Where the Germans are all about making very pristine
Yeah.
beer. It's everything is very sanitized, very controlled. Whereas the Belgians, yeah, they brew it in a farmhouse. They open the doors, the beer's wide open. Although the wild yeast flies in and lands in the beer, right? They're more like Silicon Valley. Both make good beer, but just different styles. So I have a question for you then. It might be overly simplistic, but I'm curious to hear your answer. If you were, let's say you're targeting for a customer for either your consulting or one of your programs, all else equal, I mean, this is telling me that it would be easier then to get someone from, say, California as a customer or a client than someone from Germany, just because of their, I know everyone is unique too, but so we're generalizing a lot. But if we assume that the Germans are more perfectionists and get it right the first time, and Silicon Valley is more move fast and break things, it seems to me like the Californian would be an easier convert for you for your own stuff.
That's true. But on the other hand, I think this kind of mindset, what I try to train, which people refer to Silicon Valley mindset, and I call it digital fluency, is I think way easier to train than the perfectionism. And you need the perfectionism afterwards. Imagine if you combine this crazy mindset of experimenting, being fast, and trying something
Mm,
out. And then if you figure it out and then get this made in Germany, like the perfectionism and is way harder to
mm.
learn. So I think that's why a I think like I'm this perfect German example that you can learn it and train it and you overcome all these limiting beliefs and just by doing it and then combine it with your expertise and your subject matter expertise and the quality, high quality standard in Germany. I think that's the perfect fit of being a successful company or a successful leader in the future.
I love that. Yeah. Well, and yeah, you're right. You're the perfect example because you can tell your friends in Germany, "Hey, I'm German and I did this," and the skills that we learned growing up, because you can learn this other thing. It's you're an example of it. You can provide proof to back this up.
Mhm.
Like, hey, this is the right approach to take at first, and it's fairly easy to do. I mean, it's not that hard to be sloppy, right? And to try a bunch of stuff and throw a bunch of things in the mix. It's tougher to dial something in and get it really, really
Mhm.
good. So if you can just shift your mindset, German, a little bit in the beginning here, the skill sets that you have, everyone else really struggles with. And that's why you're so poised to thrive with this type of a tool.
Yeah, I refer to a digital fluency flywheel. The flywheel, if you can imagine it, to push the flywheel to get it into motion, it's really hard. And that's what I
Mm,
say about overcoming all these barriers in the beginning. But as soon as you did this and you kind of remind yourself, like, I can do this, I changed my mind, I shifted, then the flywheel gets into motion and it gets faster and faster. And then all your other qualities come in. So it's literally the beginning. You really have to work against it. And as always in life, as soon as you get it into a habit, then it gets way easier. And that's, I think, why I'm like so into it and trying to help these women and especially the Germans kind of doing it, because I see how they have this family owned businesses, like who are so amazing and doing something amazingly good. And then it's just the little thing in the beginning, the storytelling and kind of being fearless and experimenting instead of building like a stadium. Like you just think first,
mm.
like, okay, who's my audience? Do they want to have a stadium? And then instead of building it first to perfectionism, you you start maybe in the garage like in Silicon Valley and then kind of build it up. I think that's a way easier approach, and I think it would help everybody kind of being a little bit more joyful and also more energized in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and being joyful and energized is so important because you can only fake it for so long. You can only grind it out for so long. You have to really be excited about what you're waking up to do every day. And I love that you embody that too. And I love the flywheel concept. So let's talk a little bit about that if we could. I think you really exemplify this idea of taking a stand and saying, this is what I found to work, and this is what I want to, this is what I recommend, and this is what I do if you want to join us in whatever capacity that is. Especially in your field where everyone is talking about AI, and there's kind of this idea that if I just talk about it, good things will happen because it's AI and everyone loves AI. And although I see a lot of people talking about it, I'm not seeing a lot of people really take a stand on it
Mm.
and have a recommended approach. I see a lot of curation. There's a ton of that.
Mm.
It's more like people curating you, Simone, right? And then like your colleagues who are taking a stand too and saying, here's 47 new AI tools, right? So that's that. I often talk about like this topic based approach to free content versus an argument based approach, which is the approach that we recommend and the one that you're following. So, can you talk a little bit about that, about your flywheel and taking a stand and really advocating for your way of doing things?
Yeah, the most of the people I talk to is exactly that. They have probably never ever used ChatGPT. Even if we all think everybody is so far ahead, I think most of the people actually have never really used it or applied AI into their business and lives. In Germany, also, in addition, most of the corporates don't allow using these technologies and tools, so it makes it even more difficult. But what I realized is that most of the women I talk to don't see the value. And I think that's also a bit different than to men. So, how we approach technology, men kind of take it and play around with it. And women kind of need an understanding why they should use it, right? Like, because as I said, most of people say, like, I don't have time. And that's why
Mhm.
everybody is like, when you get like 1,000, oh, here is ChatGPT is old. Now you have like 1,000 new AI tools. You feel totally overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So most of the people I talk to don't even start because they're like, oh, I can't do this at all. Or then there are other women who say like, okay, now I want to start. And then they try all these thousands tools and then again say like, oh, I don't see any value for me. It doesn't work. And I take a different approach. So I first kind of come and talk and kind of analyze with these women why they should use AI. What problem do they face in their life? Like, I want to show them the value. So instead of taking AI the tool, as I call it. It's not, most of the people think it's a
Mhm.
solution, but I call it as just a tool. So think about your problems first. What do you want to do with AI, right? What's your problem? And if you tell me you don't have time, I'm like, perfect. AI is a perfect tool to help you get more time. So write down what is all the things which cost you time, right? And I'm sure I can find at least 5 things which probably AI can give you some time back. So, and if you show
Mhm.
them this kind of things, or say, I have a health issue and I have to have a new diet, and it's so difficult for me to plan all the diet, and I don't have the money to get a consultant in, I can show them how they can train AI to get them kind of a personal coach in their pocket. And as soon as you show them value to solve a problem they really care, then suddenly the mind kind of gives them the signal of saying, hey, wow, that makes sense to me. And then also, if you approach it by them, then it's way easier to find the right tool, right? To find the right AI tool, because you have a problem, and I'm sure in the internet somebody solved that problem already for you. So so the search for the tools is way easier, and at the end you don't have 1,000 tools to test. You probably have five, and
Mhm.
then it's way easier to not get overwhelmed. And at the end, you have a solution which makes you happy, hopefully. So all in all, it's a cycle. So I start with the flywheel, with first analyzing what problem do you want to solve, what matters to you. Then we look into, okay,
Mhm.
what kind of tech is available, what kind of solutions are already there. Then we play an experiment with it, and then suddenly you connect the dots. Somehow, I don't know, it feels like a detective. You come into and find a solution, and as soon as you have a solution, at least I tell my friends, or I get a little bit more on LinkedIn and ask somebody else, hey, this is what I found out. Maybe somebody else can come up and with other ideas on top of it. And that's how the flywheel actually ends and accelerates, because you get collective intelligence from everybody else. So that's my
Mm.
approach to technology. And it's not only AI, it's whatever emerging technologies out there. You can literally use this kind of 4-step model to get your acceleration and your flywheel going.
Uh, yeah, I love that model, and you're so right about needing to point out the why. And yeah, my wife Laura, is a good example, and she had heard me talking about AI and ChatGPT and these things, but she didn't know the why. She didn't have a why for herself. And then finally, she discovered it, and she's largely used ChatGPT. She's used ChatGPT a lot now and loves
Mm.
it, and it's largely helping her with communication. And so, sending emails, she's helping family members with businesses, often in multiple languages, and it's really helped her with that communication side of things. And so now that she can tie it to a goal, she's like, oh, this thing is awesome. And it also, and her example is great too, because it backs up something that you preach, and I want to get more into, which is for these women that you help, it's this combination. It's the combining the human side with the tech side, because what my wife is doing, she brings her human side into it. She brings that empathetic side into it, right? That very female quality that she has to really listen to people and to get people. And now she's combining it with the tech to really supercharge what she's doing. So I think she's a prime example of the person that you help and what you preach. So tell me about that. Tell me about combining for women the human side with the tech side and why that's so powerful.
So most of us women are quite good in the human skills. For example, creativity or collaboration, communication, all these kind of things. And in the past, it was when I arrived in Silicon Valley over 10 years ago, it was really hard to get a creative idea out of your head, because you had to invest a lot of money or investors, or you have to be a developer, like technical skills.
Mhm.
But when AI came into the game, then at some point I realized how it kind of augments my human skills. So I was always really creative, and as I said, I had really a hard time to develop my voice and kind of find the story. But as soon as I figured out my story, I was like, okay, now I have to tell people my story. So over 10 years
Mhm.
ago, it would have been difficult, right? Like, I mean, there was like not much going on, but now you have all these platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter or like now X, but you have a lot of these kind of things. But then in addition, like you need also something like you have all the tools, but then you need something, how can I write my story or make a video or something out of it? And in the past, I had to hire develop like not developer like creative agencies or someone, and then my budget is probably not, I don't have this budget. But now these tools give me the possibility to get my creativity out of my head. So suddenly my stories I had in my head for so long I could get out, and not only that but also distribute it to the world and kind of find contributors and other people following me. And so I always had wings to fly, but these no technologies now give
Mhm.
me like the height and the speed and a productivity kind of level I never had in my life before, and for more or less no money, because they're most of the tools I use are really cheap or even for free. And I think that's a huge,
Mhm.
huge benefit for us women now who are really creative. And in the past, we were kind of missing these tools because we were not technological driven or had this knowledge. Now we can do it, and
Mhm.
there's no excuse anymore. You can do it, literally get it out.
I love that. And we talk about marketing not being what most people think it is, which is all this technology and marketing automation and the tactics and all these channels and everything. But it's really making an argument. And then on top of that, you can layer in, and then you send that argument down these channels, and then you can enhance that argument with all these different tactics and things. But at its core, it's an argument, and part of an argument. And then, of course, you have to ask the question: how do you make a good argument? And to do that, you have to make claims or assertions, and then back them up with
Mm.
proof. And we talk about that in the book, and that's also part of the five light bulbs, of course. And so it sounds like a major claim that you're making, or maybe it's your primary one, is something like women, when you combine the tech with the human side, which you already possess, amazing things can happen. Is that roughly
Yes,
the major claim that you're making?
yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you have the proof, which is, and then claim and then proof, right? And you have the best proof, which is your own personal story, because you can say, I have direct experience with this. But I'm curious, what other ways, what other proof elements have you used in your own marketing, because this is what marketing is, to prove that claim, to get that point across that when you combine the tech with the human, women, good things happen.
Yeah, so I was thinking about how I can prove that. And also, people always think it's about age, right? Like, oh, the young generation is so much more tech confident than the older generations. And I wanted to get this away and saying, like, no, if you use this with your creativity, you can do whatever. So, my oldest woman in my class was over 60. And obviously, she felt ashamed, feeling behind in comparison to everybody else, but she has all the leadership skills she built up over years. She was like running head of the university. She was had a beautiful network. And what was just missing was like kind of the being like overcoming the fear of touching technology. And that really helped her. And we
Mm.
did this in by combining her with an 18-year-old woman, or 20-year-old woman, right? Who have no fear of touching technology, but they're missing all these other human skills, probably where the other one is better in. So, for example,
Mm.
the young generation, I had just recently one who was 18 out of school, and the she heard about ChatGPT, was not allowed to use it at school like all the others, and then I literally uh, pushed her from opening PowerPoints to building her own GPT, like customized GPT within
Nice.
5 weeks. And the interesting thing I can say is that the young generation has no fear of touching technology, which makes it really easy
Mm.
to push them and kind of accelerate them really quickly. Um, so you only need to upskill them a little bit in all these tech kind of things. But I could see how easy she can kind of transform. Or I had someone who was an engineer for so many years, and between jobs she never defined herself as creative at all. But then suddenly
Mm.
she realized that technology is not all about just technology. Technology can also help enhance you human skills which you before thought you don't have. For example, she thought like I'm not creative. So by using suddenly all these tech tools, she told me like, oh, now I can think outside of my box. Because in the past, my
Mm,
engineering kind of thinking was like, I'm not creative, because creativity has something to do with, colors and design and artists. But being creative could also mean like organizing your automation process in a creative way, which you never thought before. So
mm,
all these kind of things, and it showed me definitely like that it's not an age. Everybody can be and change their mindset. It doesn't have to be like you have to be 18 or 34. But what you need is
mm.
literally you have to be open-minded, and you have to have this lifelong learning kind of mindset, which you want to change. I can't change anybody if they don't want to be there. So if a boss
Yeah.
tells me, oh, Miss Maya wants to be part of your class and Miss Maya doesn't want to be there, I can't do anything, because it's literally you have to have the desire of make the change.
Yeah, yeah, that desire, so that openness is so important. That's another belief, right? They need to have the belief that I can grow, I can learn, I can overcome my challenges, my limiting beliefs, many of which are not even true. Like I'm too old for this. So it sounds like your main proof element then has been storytelling. That's your go-to.
Yeah. I think story, because my whole life is based on story, probably my own story. It starts with me, right? I think lots of people tell me I'm kind of the inspiring part of this thing. They signed up for my class because of me, because I just
Hmm.
show them, hey, I literally what's it called, like, preach what I teach. So I am the
Yeah.
woman, maybe a couple of steps ahead, but I have exactly the
Hmm.
same fears like everybody in my class. I totally relate with them. And I also have imposter syndrome, all these kind of things, which I constantly have to overcome. But I push, 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 and then I see also the results. And by flying a little bit higher than everybody else, I can kind of give them a hand, kind of, like, and kind of, come, come, it's cool here, let's come. And then that's how I kind of convince right now most of my women who join my program. So it's a lot of storytelling.
Mm, yeah, well, I would say that is, we have all these different forms of proof, and that is my number one. That's my go-to storytelling. I think it fits some topics. I think it fits yours beautifully. Like, I think that there's other ones, other forms of proof, data and things like that, and you can weave that into what you're doing, and that fits other areas as well. But it makes a lot of sense that for what you're talking about, it has such. I mean, the human element is part of it, right? Like that's part of your main method is combining the tech with the human. So it makes sense that the best way to get that point across is through telling these stories of these women who have done it before, including yourself, of course.
Well, the biggest learning, I think, of last year was, so I integrated a lot of data last year. I automated a lot of things. So trying to be an AI first company. So obviously, I look into data and kind of make decisions about content, which works, what doesn't. But what I learned end of the year was that at some point I was focusing so much on these data, how many clicks, how many views, how many things, that I totally forgot on enjoying the journey of going there, like enjoying, also forgetting sometimes, because I had a bad click and view, kind of my day was ruined and I questioned my business, instead of kind
Mm.
of opening up a folder where women let you tell me how I help them. So that's actually my learning, that I don't compare myself constantly about everybody else, that like, oh, 6 figures in 3 months. I never can do this, but I now concentrate more on these stories, which actually not my stories, but the stories women tell me, how I kind of changed and transformed them. And that makes my life way easier, and gets me up every morning.
Well, and then you have data there as
That's
well, because I
the
know
thing.
that you have a very high success rate with your programs.
True, true. I mean, the data should go up, right? I mean, at some point, yeah, if you do something wrong, but I think also data only works as more you get in, right? As more you feed some stuff. So it's again back to experimenting. You have to try lots of stuff to analyze, okay, what works, what doesn't work.
Mm,
And sometimes the interesting thing is the best thing work where you don't think about it all. Yesterday I just posted something without even thinking, and I got the best performance ever. And most of the time I sit there thinking what I would
Isn't that
write,
funny?
and it's so unfair because I'm like make so much time and effort in it, and then sometimes it just works. So
That is so good that I'm going to end it right there because I just love that idea of just trying things, just getting it out there and not second guessing yourself.
mhm.
So thank you so much, Simone. Where can people learn more about you and what you do?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Simone Lis. That's probably a good one. But I have also a website, futurereadywoman.com, and I host masterclasses. And I would love to have more women following me because we need a more diverse group of women who want to be like a change agent in tech. Because right now they're only white guys, and we need to change that.
Yes, be a future ready woman. Follow Simone. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you.